Hello and welcome to Empire Builders, the place for entrepreneurs, business owners and experts who want to build an epic empire. I'm Nick James and thanks for joining me here today. In today's episode of the Empire Builders podcast, I am joined by Trevor G. Blake. Now, Trevor is a 2 times New York Times best-selling author and a serial entrepreneur with over $300 million of exits to his name. So Trevor, welcome to the Empire Builders podcast. Thank you for your time. Let's get stuck in, shall we?
Yeah, please do, Nick. I look forward to it.
So I should probably share with our audience, Trevor and I have literally only just met. We've been introduced by a mutual friend, lovely lady called Lisa Cato, who I've known for many years, works with Trevor on helping him with his automation and marketing in his business. And Lisa introduced me to Trevor and said, you got to speak to this guy. You got to get to know him. And I went, it'd be really cool to speak to him and get to know him whilst our audience are listening. So I'm kind of going to get to know Trevor with you listening in, if that's okay, audience. So Trevor, first of all, I know that one of your books is called Secrets to a Successful Startup. We've got in our community, our audience, we've probably got about 30 to 40% of our audience are startups and the remainder are kind of more experienced, established businesses. But for those startups, and I know you've started up a number of businesses yourself, what are some of the do's, don'ts, the rights, wrongs, the advice you would give to somebody starting a business from scratch?
Well, I mean, the reason I wrote Secrets to a Successful Startup, Nick, is I keep seeing so many entrepreneurs bump into walls unnecessarily. A lot of them come out, as you know, I'm preaching to the choir here, but a lot of them come out of the corporate world and they've come with these preconceived notions of how to start a business. And they try to do in a startup exactly what they were taught to do in the corporate world. But typically, and I've been in the corporate world before I started my first company. I didn't start my first company till I was 43. And so I was a bit late to decide to grow up, if you like. But when I came out of the corporate world, I actually left all that stuff behind because it did my head in. So all the meeting mentality, the 360 appraisal approaches and stuff like that, they're fine for the corporate world. But I looked at my career and I thought, okay, I've spent 75% of my time holding the hands of disgruntled employees. I don't want to do that anymore. I want to build companies. So I came up with a whole new way of doing it, using a hub model instead of a hierarchical structure. So I've never had an employee. All these companies I've just been me, been a band of one, which has been brilliant. So I could focus on growth. But when I kept seeing these people bump into the wall, I felt really sorry for them. But at the time, I didn't have the bandwidth to say, look, I'll come and coach you. I've got plenty of bandwidth now. So I decided to do it. So the way to start it was to write the book, which I think, so I went to a big bookstore here called Barnes & Noble, and I spent ages trying to find books on startups because I don't want to just repeat what's out there. Couldn't find anything. Lots of management consultant books, loads of them, how to be a better manager, but nothing on how to start up right, do it the right way. So the bumping primarily is cash flow issues, not understanding cash flow. 82% of company failures are for that reason alone. And so I think you can avoid those bumping into walls and things if you start the right way. So Secrets to a Successful Startup is a step-by-step guide, including before you even start your company, how to come up with a winning idea. What makes a winning idea? And then once you've got that idea, what do you do with it? How do you keep reacting forward so it becomes reality? So I think it's the ultimate guide. It's like stepping stones across a pond, as long as you just follow the formula.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. The amount of people that have had a successful corporate career that I meet that come to our events, and then try and apply the same thing that works over here in their small startup business. It's not the same environment at all. You've piqued my interest with a couple of things. Tell me about this hub model, because I've built businesses over the years. My current business, we've got 26 full-time members of our team who are amazing. And I'm fascinated about different views and different ways to do things. So tell me, how do you build the companies you've built without any team members, any employees whatsoever? I'm fascinated.
The idea came to me more, it is necessity is the mother of invention. So I didn't have a lot of cash, so I couldn't go and hire a bunch of people. So that was good. If I'd had a lot of cash, I might not have figured this out. I might have gone the same way as a lot of other people. But in my regular career, when we produced a new product and we're about to launch it, we never had enough people, never enough sales and marketing people, never enough distribution people, never enough regulatory. So we'd go out and we'd hire people, and what we go, we find a company that does this for a living, and we bolt them onto our launch for a period of time, 6 months or a year or something. And I thought, why not just bolt them on permanently? So when I started, I went to some people I knew, obviously, but I'd go to where the vendors all get together. I go to their little seminars that they do once a year, and I'd pick the one that felt right for me. And I'd say, look, I'm new, I'm starting out. I don't have the money to hire a bunch of people yet. I want to do a fee for service contract with you, and I don't want to pay you for 90 days. I want you to help me build this. And then when we build it, so I found I had the flexibility to really, as the rookie company for these people who were experts, I could kind of emotionally blackmail into giving me a little bit of time to get going before they started to want their fees, if you like. And it worked so well, and the profit margins were so high, I just kept doing it. And so with my first company, I started it with just a few $100s actually, and because I found out I didn't need a lot more doing it this way, because I didn't have to pay, signing on bonuses and stuff.
What was the, sorry to interrupt you, what was the reason
No.
at 43 years of age in 2003, I think you said, you went, I'm starting a business? Like what was the reason? What was the catalyst for that?
I fell out. My boss was the CEO, and I told him I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it myself, because I presented a plan to him for 3 times. He said he'd taken it to the board of directors. Then I found out that was a lie. So I thought, okay, something's off here. And so we had a stand-up row, and you never win a stand-up row with your boss, no matter who you are. So the writing was on the wall. So I said, well, I'll do it myself. And he said, but you're not capable. You're not smart enough. You've never been a CEO. You don't have a financial background. You've been in sales and marketing all your life. It's a disaster. You're going to fail. And that made me so mad. I wanted to prove him wrong. So I actually started out with, it really doesn't matter what your source of motivation is, so long as you are motivated. So mine was to prove this guy wrong, and one day get into his face and say, told you so. And so that's why I started it. And we just moved into a brand new house. I was living high on the hog in the corporate world, $400,000 a year salary, nice expense account. And we just bought a house on the water in Tampa Bay in Florida. My wife and I. My wife's also was also from England. She died a couple of years ago, unfortunately. And it was the house of her dreams, and I felt so good. But I thought, oh shit, what have I just done? I'd better sell the house, get the equity back out of the house 7 months later. And so I planned to take her to dinner and explain it very carefully. I had it on the plane back home. I had my whole verbiage planned out. I opened the front door and she said, oh, you're starting a company finally. So I said, oh, right, okay. And she said, do we have to move? I said, yeah, afraid so. I used some of the equity in the house. It wasn't a lot. It was about 80,000 and what few $100s I had in the bank account to get started. And it went from there. And I didn't know if I would enjoy it, actually, but I absolutely loved it. I'm addicted to building companies now, but I also get bored really quickly. So I'm addicted to exiting quickly too. And that's kind of my business stuff.
How much of an advantage do you think your sales and marketing background was in starting up? How much of an advantage do you think you had from that background versus if you'd had more of a operational background or a finance background or HR background or something like that? What do you think?
Yeah, and it's a really good question, Nick, because I meet a lot of entrepreneurs who, come out of finance or something, and they're a bit afraid, they're a bit intimidated to sell and to pitch. And one of the things being in sales and marketing, we pitch all the time, and if you're any good, you get good at it. So I wasn't intimidated pitching to potential investors or pitching to vendors or anything like that. That really helped. But by the same token, when I was in the regular career, the company I left to start this first company was reasonably small, 70 employees. And they were in Minnesota, and I lived in California, and I would fly to Minnesota once a month. And while I was there, I would make sure that I went around everybody, so they didn't forget me, basically. But I would go around, I was a VP of commercial development, but I'd go around and I'd talk to the manufacturers, and I would talk to the board of directors and the advisors and all that. And I got to know enough of the issues across all the functions of a business to understand how it all comes together. That really helped. That helped more than being in sales and marketing, to put a hub model together. And so my advice to anybody who likes the idea of a hub model, like I can start with very little cash and I can take my time, I know it'll run itself eventually. My advice would be, while you're in the corporate world, treat it as paid training and go talk to everybody, absolutely everybody you can. Be a pain in the ass, go knock on a door and bring in pizza and say, can I have 2 hours of your time? And you can tell me what you do for a living. So I did a lot of that. And I felt that gave me the kind of self-confidence to do this. Obviously I didn't know everything about every vendor, but I knew enough to be able to pick a good vendor. And I think that was more valuable to me than being in sales and marketing.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. So it was, I think from what you've told me or what I've read, you started in 2003 and in 2009 you exited. That's only six years later for, I've got 109 million.
105.5. I'll never forget the number. Like
105.5.
105.5 million.
So
I couldn't understand what 0.5 million was.
I just added a few million on for extra, but I mean, even at 105.5, this is unbelievable in 6 years. So like, I mean, I don't even know where we start with this. Like, how? I mean, that's ridiculous. Explosive growth in a relatively short period of time. Like, how did you do that? How did that happen?
Well, I got the rights to a product that was doing 700,000 a year. I paid 2.1 million for it. But I kind of knew that there's a lot more upside to this product. So first of all, we could sell more of it. That was obvious. But secondly, it was so underpriced. It was embarrassing. So I quadrupled the price, took a bit of flack for it, but it soon died down. I changed the distribution completely so that this product was getting shipped directly to people's home, and so I cut out kind of 2-3 middlemen that way. So we ended up with a net profit of 76%, and that's attractive to a lot of buyers. And so after I got a few offers before I even sold, but we weren't finished. We weren't the finished article. Yeah, I wanted to hand over something that would keep going. It's still out there, by the way. This company, QLL Medical, Qual Medical, Cooper Capital bought it from me for 105.5 million. They're still doing pretty well, but with exactly the same products. And I'm very proud to say that their taglines are the same ones that I put out there all those years ago. That makes me so happy. Anyway, so it comes down to multiples because the profits were so attractive. They could see that they could buy this from me. It's a hub model. They don't have to change a thing. It's just simply changing ownership. It's like buying a used car. And so we did a multiple, and I think it was 7 times profit. That's why it comes out to a weird number of 105.5. So it came out to, it was down to the penny, you know, the people that bought it were very pernickety. But it was great. I mean, yeah, you're right. I mean, I was so delighted. It's a fantastic success. I didn't get all 105.5 million, obviously, because by that point in time, I brought in investors. Once it was doing well, I went out and raised 28 million to get the rights to another product. And that only took 6 weeks, which is really interesting.
How did you fund the first purchase? Because you said that you bought the rights for 2.1, but you started off with 80,000 that you had equity in your house. So how did you structure that deal to buy the rights to the product, which by the sounds of it was the catalyst for everything, really, was purchasing the rights to that product in the first place. And then everything was built upon that foundation, right?
I tried to borrow the money. I knocked on 50 different doors and got rejected 50 different times politely. And then the final door I didn't knock on because what I decided was missing, why I was getting rejected, was that I didn't have a proof of concept. And the thing that my CEO had told me kept coming up, like, well, you've not done this before. No one's done it this way before. It's a risk. And so I thought to myself, I need to prove this then. So I got the rights to a product that was doing $90,000 a year for free, right, because they'd run out of product and they needed to manufacture it. And the manufacturing was X hundred thousands, et cetera, et cetera. And I managed to pull that one off. So I used the equity in RSP to take that annual product and take sales from 90 to 270 using the model. And then went back to the same people that rejected me and said, it works. And I think that was the piece I was too naive about back then, that you definitely need a proof of concept if you want to raise money. And anyone listening to this, you know, that would be my really big advice in today's market, because you're competing with a lot of people. An idea is not enough to get investment, I don't think. Unless it's, you know, unless you've already proved yourself like Elon Musk and you're going into space now, maybe someone will believe in it, but he used most of his own money anyway. So I proved the concept, and then I went back to the same doors that rejected me, and it was fairly easy. But at this point, I changed the game myself as well. Instead of saying, give me 2.1 million in exchange for, you know, a big piece of my company, I said, give me 2.1 million. You can have 70% of my company. If I pay it back within 6 years, we switch it and I own 70%. And that took the risk mitigation away. I've given it a name because I'm British like you. I'm allowed catchphrases. So I call it a hybrid investment. So you can, if you really believe in your product, you can say to any investor, I'll give you all the company. And if I pay you back in a certain amount of time, I get it back minus a piece. So I got 70% back and was very happy to give away 30% because investors bring, in my experience, so much more than the money. So I was happy to work with them anyway.
Yeah, that's super smart. I'm becoming increasingly fascinated with creative deal structures. And I think a lot of the time when when deals can't be struck, it's really just a lack of creativity from one or both of the parties. Something else you said that really resonated with me. I say to a lot of our clients, think big, start small. And so I think a lot of entrepreneurial types, people like us, think really big, but often we don't necessarily always have the humility to start small. Hence why, we can come up with this big grand idea, but then struggle to get funding for it or struggle to sell it or whatever it might be. But I think what you did, which was really smart, is you went, actually, even though I'm thinking big over here, I'm going to start small here and, get the rights to something that's selling $90,000 a year and needs something different, and then apply your model, prove the concept here, and then it opens the gateway. I suppose it's just a little bit of patience, really, to go, I'm going to play a smaller game at the moment to prove the concept in order to open the gateway to the bigger game later.
Yeah, I mean, there's different ways of doing it. I that opportunity just landed in my lap. I have a course called the Transformation Experience where I teach people the importance of tuning into your intuition. And when you do that, then you see these opportunities where you wouldn't see before. And that's exactly what I did. So I said, oh, no one's looking at this. I'll take it. I'll do it. And that kind of, works out really well. But I think in other business or other business fields, it's really important to show to an investor not just the prototype or not just that this works, but the customers like it. And so that when I say, I got a proof of concept, I put this model together. I went to all of these customers and said, what do you think of this? Help me improve it. And I'll give it you for free, but you give me the data of the benefit you're getting out of the product. And when you take that to an investor, it's a bit of a no-brainer because they can see two things. One, the model works, and two, customers like it. And actually three, we can make a profit here. Because they'll buy it and they're already buying it. I think it's hard to go to investors without that in your pocket these days. It's the world's moving so fast. Everything changes so quickly. By the time it takes you can't do it the way I did it in 2003 when the internet was still dial-up. you can't go knocking on 50 doors anymore. You've got to really be smart and think, or one has to be really smart and think it through and come up with a foolproof plan that the investors are going to have to come up with a really good reason why they wouldn't invest.
I'm nosy, so I'm going to ask some personal questions. You're a Brit, sure. I believe from the Northwest.
Yeah, I was born in Liverpool, and I grew up poor. My parents we were evicted as a family 3 or 4 times, and the 4th time we ended up in North Wales in a derelict farmhouse. So I'm kind of a hybrid between. I feel like a Scouser in my heart, but I sound a little Welsh when I talk sometimes. So.
My dad's a Red. He was born in Liverpool as well. Although again, like you, he's not lived there for a very long time. Are you a Red or a Blue?
Well, I'm wearing a blue shirt. I am a Red, diehard Red through and through. Wow. And I will say thank goodness because I've had a really good 30 years or so being a Reds fan.
Indeed. Well, my dad would be well happy with that. And how did you end up in South California? I mean, you mentioned that you were in Tampa and you were working in different parts of the US. So how did you end up in the US, and how did you end up in Newport Beach, California, where you are now?
It's a cool story, actually. So one of the books you mentioned, 3 Simple Steps, has this story patted out. But the reason I put this story in is I use this very story of chasing my dream and getting to our dreams to show how the tools and techniques that are in the transformation course work. That if you do this, this is what happens. And so I do it like that because we have these things, and I'm a physicist, so we have these things in the front of our brain called mirror neurons. They allow us to learn by observation, and that's how I got out of the quicksand of being in that derelict house. Is I read biography after biography after biography, and so I learned the best practices of other people without having to go through their up and down experience, and that's why that goes back to
who are the best ones. I love biographies, especially when I'm on holiday. Who are the best ones you read?
Best one I ever read is Madam C.J. Walker. And think of these circumstances. Okay, sometimes I think I'm up against some challenges with business. It's the economy or the capital market or something like that. Here's her challenges, right? She's born to slaves. Slavery gets quote unquote abolished, but because she's a woman, she's not allowed to work. And if she could work, she can only work in a farming capacity. But if she's working in a farming capacity, she can't have any implements because they're considered dangerous weapons in the hands of this woman. She gets married at 4. She's made to marry at 14. She's made pregnant. He abuses her terribly. She's so malnourished and so stressed, all her hair falls out. She's got no hope in life whatsoever. There's no chance for this woman. She tries all these kind of hair tonics to try and rub it into her scalp to try and get the hair to grow, and they all turn out to be snake oil. So she makes her own, and she goes door to door, although they probably didn't have doors where she was, but she goes door to door selling the hair tonic she made, and it takes off. And she became America's first female, not just black female, America's first female millionairess.
Wow.
And then she used that success to get involved politically and to change the lynching laws. I was blown away by that. And I read that when I was 15 years old. And I thought, and I was getting bullied, and I was thinking the world was on top of me. And I thought, my goodness, I need to grow up. I'm moaning and moaning about being bullied, and look what she went through and conquered it all. And whenever I'd come up against a kind of a challenge, I always go back to that biography. And on the opposite side of that, I'm reading one right now. I thirst for biographies like we all do, all entrepreneurs do. So I'm reading Elon Musk's biography now by Walter Isaacson. He did the Steve Jobs biography, a really great job he did of it. And I'm loving it. It's a page turner. There's a lot I didn't know. I thought I knew, but didn't know. And, I'd love to meet him.
Yeah. Well, I'll definitely check both of those out. So thanks for the recommendations. You were telling me how you ended up in Newport Beach.
Oh, yeah. So my wife and I, we tried to have kids for 7 years. I was living in England, working for a company in England, and it didn't work out. So we just sat down with a bottle of wine and said, well, we could be miserable. We were part of a group of people who were going through IVF, and they all broke up, but it made us stronger. And so we said, well, we can either be miserable or we can be irresponsible for the rest of our lives. What do you want to do? And she said, I've always wanted to live and work in America. So the story in 3 simple steps is how I used the tools and techniques of transformation to put myself in the position to make that happen, because everyone said it's impossible. You don't have the right qualifications, you don't have connections, you don't have enough money to invest into getting a green card out there. And then all kinds of stuff came into place. My boss got fired. My new boss turned out to be from America. He helped me a little bit, and then I ended up going to Minnesota and finding a job in Minnesota. And then and I'm a terrible corporate employee. So in the big Minnesota campus of this company, they couldn't wait to send me as far away as possible. And there was 2 choices. It was Boston or Southern California. So they ejected me to Southern California. So I got ejected a 5th time, but this time it was a good one.
Well, the weather's better in Southern California than it is in Boston, so I think you lucked out.
Yeah.
So you've mentioned your there's 2 books that I'm aware of. I don't know if there's any others. The 3 Simple Steps and Secrets to a Successful Startup. I believe or understand that the profits from those books have been all for charitable causes, for cancer research in particular. What's the reason for that? Why is that so important to you?
Authenticity. There are so many books written by people whose only success is the fact the book caught on. They hadn't done anything. Like, we know the classic ones, right? The Secret and Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich, and The Science of Getting Rich from Walter, whatever his name was, Whitty or something like that. I have an opinion on it. It's probably not a very positive opinion of all those books, but the thing that stands out, even if I might like what they say, and what they say typically makes me feel better about the life I'm living, where actually what I want is a better life. But even if what they say is good, behind them is an author who never achieved anything. And it makes me go, hang on. And I've read them all, and I do like reading them. It do make me feel better, but think, hang on, that's not right. So I waited until I'd sold my first company to write my version of a self-help book, because I'm an entrepreneur, and entrepreneurs are fixers, right? So we're all fixers. And I wanted to fix something I felt was missing in the the self-help industry. And that is authenticity. So first of all, some guy waiting till he's successful and then showing how that happened. Here's the tools and techniques. Good luck. Is authentic. And then secondly, saying, look, I'm not doing this for the money. That's authentic. And that was why I did that, purely.
And I believe it was, is it cancer research specifically that you donate the profits to?
Cancer research and development for a program that's working on a non-side effect treatment for cancer. So imagine how magical that is. Okay, treatment without those side effects. That's and kind of we've been working on that non-profit. We've been working on that since 2005.
Amazing. Well, amazing work, and congrats on Well, a lot of things. Congrats on the amazing successes you've had in business, on the success of the books, raising money for great causes. I'm fascinated to get to know even more about what you stand for and what you're about. Where can people find out more about you, Trevor? Where's the best place for them to check you out? Where can they buy the books? Like how best to follow you and learn more?
Books are available anywhere you can get books, although I'm told that there's a backlog in the UK for Three Simple Steps, but you can get the ebook version. So my name right there on the avatar, trevorgblake.com.
Right.
So
Go on.
sorry, everything goes through trevorgblake.com, and there's a bunch of freebies on the website which will help you anyway. So even if our paths didn't cross again, it's worth going there and taking a look. And I've got one of my favorites is the practical magic of the 5-hour workday, which I put together as kind of a mini course, but it's also a PDF version. I put it together during COVID for all of those people who are coming out of the corporate world and suddenly having to work from home and burning out really quickly, because I don't work more than 5 hours a day on purpose. Because I'm a scientist, so I'm fascinated by how the brain works, and so the peak brain performance is really important as an entrepreneur. You don't want to get burned out. So it's about scheduling your day around productivity period. I work from 9 to 11 typically. I count this as work. I'm starting overtime now, and then deliberate relaxation periods where the magic happens, where we get those incredible breakthrough ideas. So scheduling a day like that. So for all entrepreneurs, even that freebie is worth digging into.
Amazing. So I'm not a scientist in any way, shape, or form. Certainly not my forte or area of expertise, but I am fascinated by the science of how the brain, how the body works, how we can, as entrepreneurs, as business owners, as leaders, optimize for for best performance. How you mentioned 5 hours a day max is your kind of your scientific opinion of the best way to work. How important or how much of an impact does, because I've been looking at it a lot over the last couple of years, how much of an impact does sleep have, and recovery and heart rate and all of that stuff? I might be opening a can of worms here, but I've got somebody here who's an expert in the field and I'm not, so I want to know more.
So if anyone looks up at any of the studies that have been done on what are the habits of the successful or the wealthy compared to those who haven't made that label yet, there's a clear line in between. And on the one side are people who don't watch a lot of TV and read a lot of biographies, spend a lot of time out in fresh air, keep themselves fit, and are very careful about what they put in their body. And on the other side, they don't. Just quite simply. And so it's a question of how, your life is at stake. How committed are you? How disciplined are you? And without making it an obsession. Okay. So in my case, 5 hours of work works for me. It won't work for every business. I understand that, but there's ways to work around it. And so the key thing is that the brain can't concentrate for more than 2 hours. And after that, it's, even though we kid ourselves when in the zone, it's diminishing returns, and that's no good. And so that's why I schedule it the way I do. I also believe in the power of intuitive decision making as an entrepreneur. So I spend a lot of time in nature learning how to connect, and I teach that in my transformation course. And that's probably been the biggest advantage I've had as an entrepreneur. Behind that, though, is something else, and that is that all these entrepreneurs, including some of my friends I bump into, who are working 10 or 12-hour days, and they're successful, but they're not happy. And they're on their third wife or third husband. The dogs don't recognize them. The kids can't stand them. And it's just no way to live. And the stress is incredible. The pressure, a lot of them are on, what I call it, distracting paths, whether it's with alcohol or pills or something like that. That's no way to live. And that's why I do what I do today. That's why I'm still doing this when I really don't need to. It's about, for me, my tagline now, my next catchphrase, if you like, for this phase of Trevor G. Blake is success with balance. Doesn't have to be that way. So if you can learn the practical magic of the 5-hour workday, why it works, the history of it, it's not new. It's actually old. It predates the Industrial Revolution. And then mix into that these magical tools that we use in order to get what we want out of the energy of the universe. I know it sounds a bit woo-woo, but it's all scientific. I explain it all in my work. Then you can build a life that's successfully balanced. So you can be equally successful, but you can be equally happy. again, like you were when you were a kid. And I'm finding so many entrepreneurs that get burned out just because we feel guilty if we're not working. We sit in front of our computer, and if there's no emails, we think there's something going on. We're not doing it right. If our WhatsApp isn't dinging every 5 seconds, I must be doing something wrong. And when I first started, there wasn't a WhatsApp, thank goodness. But I would sit waiting for the phone to ring, and it would ring, and I'd have it by my ear in a nanosecond. I was thinking, this isn't a way to live. And then I realized with the hub model, well, guess what? So a hub model, 6 months in, I went on vacation to England to see family because I hadn't been over for a year. And the phone in those days, the cell phone internationally didn't work very well at all, if at all. And so when I came back 3 weeks later, I felt for sure my business is gone. It's got to have disappeared because I haven't been able to connect or communicate with anyone. And when I got back, it was actually running better than when I left. And no one had noticed I'd gone. And so it's a question of mixing a few things. One is getting the discipline to schedule and to understand how important it is to connect, to deepen connection. And then second is building a business model that makes sense so that you can, so you're not spending 8 hours a day supervising somebody. So you can start clean and fresh. And the hub model doesn't work for every business at every stage, but it definitely works for every business at the start. And so I can help people figure it out. I get people push back and say, but in my business, it won't work. And I say, well, if you looked at it this way, and it always works. And what it does is, it helps the business run without too many ups and downs. And then it eventually runs itself. And it frees one up to focus on the things that we got into the business in the first place for, which is how do we make an impact? How do we grow? How do we satisfy our customers? Whereas most of the time, if you're in the corporate world or you start a business, a startup, like a corporate startup, you're spending all your time holding the hands of disgruntled employees. I'm not sure you've had it, Nick, the first year when you hire people, they're so enthusiastic to work for a small company and a startup. And then a year later, they're so dissatisfied because it takes longer. It's more complicated, and then they'll say, I want a pay rise, and the cash isn't there. Or they'll say, I'll take the know-how away with me unless you pay me or unless you promote me or something. And you just don't want to deal with that in the early couple of years.
For sure. Trevor, thank you so much for your time. I've got one final question. What is the one piece of advice you would give to an entrepreneur, a business owner who's looking, I want to specifically look at if they want to enhance how their brain works, what's one thing that they could do that would make the biggest impact so that they can have better performance, mind and body?
All right. So this isn't my idea. This is NASA's. This is what they insist all their pilots do. It increases their brain function and their reflexes 34% immediately. They are required to take a 20-minute nap after lunch.
Wow. I love it. There's a lot of people listening. I will. You know what? I actually used to nap in the day a lot. Like it was quite a regular occurrence, and I haven't for years. It's not something that I do at all now. I think maybe because there's a lot of other things I'm doing to consciously and deliberately, increase my energy, my performance, things like that. But absolutely 100%. When I have done that in the past, it's been really effective. So if NASA says it's a good idea and they demand it of their employees, then it's good enough for me. So thanks again. Great advice. So those that are listening, those that are watching, check out trevorgblake.com. That's where you can find out more about Trevor's books and his trainings and his courses. And we'll put a link to your website, Trevor, in the show notes as well, on the podcast platforms. So once again, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. It's been very enjoyable. I'm sure we'll speak again. And for everybody listening, remember, the more you connect, Okay, that's it for today. Thank you so much for listening to Empire Builders. Please subscribe, leave us a review on Apple, on Spotify, on other platforms, and share the love, tell your friends. Remember, till next time, the more you connect, the more you collect.